Good afternoon and welcome to our Sustainable Newton virtual happy hour. And hopefully you guys took us seriously on that. We would love to be able to host everybody in person as we have in the past. We'll do that again, I'm quite confident, but time marches on, the world keeps spinning, and unfortunately the world also keeps getting warmer. So it's very important that we do these things in virtual ways for now. We're glad to have you join us. I'm Maurice Carter. I'm the president of Sustainable Newton. We're going to talk today about climate, and I'm no dummy. If I'm going to talk about things scientific, I'm going to have scientists with me. So I've got my fellow board members, Dr. Melissa Hage and Professor Theodosia Wade. Both, at least Melissa currently at Oxford College, Theodosia an emeritus professor there. So they're going to handle the more technical parts of this, and then I'm going to come back at the end and try to be the cheerleader that keeps us all marching forward on this. So I'm going to let Melissa go ahead and bring the slide deck up for us, and I'm just going to kick it off, and then I'm going to let each of them go through, and then I'll be back with you at the end. So the 24 Hours of Reality is a project sponsored reality project. Most of you are probably familiar with that as the Al Gore movement, but it's tens of thousands of people strong. The three of us have all been trained by the Climate Reality Project, as has Sarah Vincent, who's also on our board. So one of the things that we do each year that we're expected to do is sessions like this that teach what we learn to try and engage others in helping make the changes we need to save our climate. So it's one thing that you should know is we're far from alone today. This is a 24-hour event around the world. Last I checked this morning, there were over 15,000 presentations taking place over the next 24 hours. And so ours is only one, but ours is also the only one that's going to take a look at this from a Georgia specific, Metro Atlanta specific, and even Newton County specific perspective. So, but we've got a lot of company out there. And so if we think about that world, if we think about our place in it, what we're all doing today, everybody giving these presentations is asking and answering three basic questions. And that is, must we change? What is the climate situation, and why, is it compelling that we act now? And if we have to act, can we? Do we have the wherewithal? Do we have the means to make a difference? We hear all the time, is it too late? Oh, why? So we're going to talk about that. And then I'll be back at the end to talk about, so are we going to do this? Will we change? So first up, Melissa is going to take us through the must we change portion.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm going to start with this big question of must we change? And I'm going to tell you the answer right up front. Yes, absolutely, we must change. Our climate is changing right now. We are already feeling the impacts of this change, and it's only going to get more extreme and get more worse and impact more people. So yes, we absolutely must change. And hopefully by the end of this part, you will be convinced if you're not already convinced. So if we think about our planet Earth, we are unfortunately spewing 152 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the thin shell of our atmosphere every single day. We're treating our atmosphere as if it were an open sewer, and this just can't continue. If we think about this idea of climate change, it's often connected with the greenhouse effect. And sometimes the greenhouse effect gets a bad rap for this, but the greenhouse effect is absolutely necessary for our planet to be habitable. Our Earth on average is about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and without these, I apologize. We're going back. Without our atmosphere containing some greenhouse gases, our atmosphere would be significantly colder, and our planet would not be as habitable as it is today. So we get this energy coming from the sun. It warms the Earth. The Earth absorbs this energy and it radiates it back out. Some of it escapes into space, but some of it is getting absorbed by greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. So having some greenhouse gases is good. It's essential. We need them. But unfortunately, the concentration of our greenhouse gases in our atmosphere is increasing more and more and more. And this layer is getting thicker and thicker, and we're trapping more heat. And so while we need the greenhouse effect, this idea of global warming is really where the problem is coming in, because we're getting much hotter, much faster than we ever have in Earth's history. So if we start thinking about the effects that global warming is having, we're seeing them happening today, right? We can simply look at temperature data and we see this drastic increase in temperature over time. The majority of our, hottest years on record have all happened in the past decade, in the past 20 years, 30 years, right? And if we think about this year, 2020, there's a really good chance, there's a 72% chance that 2020 will be the new record. It'll be the new hottest year ever in recorded history, that as long as humans have been around. So this is pretty extreme. If we think about this heat and its connection to Georgia, we've had record-breaking heat here in Georgia, right? We think back to just last fall, we think back to September through October 2019, we had a record number of days above 90 degrees. And it wasn't just in Atlanta. We had record-breaking heat all over the state. We had it in Atlanta, we had it in Athens, Columbus, and Macon. So we're really seeing this heat here in Georgia, and we're feeling it, and it's getting bad. As a result of all of this record-breaking heat in the fall of 2019, it had consequences, right? There was a lack of rain, there was record-breaking heat, and this led to the rapid development of drought all across the southeastern part of the United States, and Georgia was not excluded from this. You can see as we go through the fall, we go through end of August into early October here, and we're seeing the Southeast seeing extreme drought conditions. If we think about Georgia, we're seeing abnormally dry conditions, moderate drought, and even some spots where we had severe drought. If we think about 2020 with temperature, we're on track for it being the hottest year ever, right? This is data from July 2020, and we're seeing record warms all over the country. And it's not just our country. We're seeing record warms all over the world, right? We think about places that are supposed to be hot, like Death Valley, but it's not supposed to be this hot, right? Just in August, just not too long ago, it recorded the highest record temperature ever recorded on our planet at almost 130 degrees Fahrenheit. We think about our Arctic and our Antarctic. We're also seeing extreme temperatures here. Back in February, which is the summer for the Southern Hemisphere, we had a record-breaking temperature of almost 65 degrees down in Antarctica. We broke 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Siberia. These are places that are supposed to be cold, and we're seeing this drastic warming of our entire planet. If we start thinking about the consequences of this warming, there's lots of things that we can think of, and wildfires is probably something that's on all of our minds a lot more now than it has in the past. So as our temperatures are rising, we're getting this snow melt happening earlier and earlier. And so our forests are getting drier, and they're staying drier for longer periods of times. And these ecosystems are just prime for the ignition and spreading of wildfires. And we see that the fires are getting worse. They're larger and costlier than ever before. And their emissions are increasing global warming. They're making it worse. So as we get more fires, we get more rising temperature, which means way earlier snowmelt and more forest fires. We've got this positive feedback loop that's going to keep going and going. And we have this data. We see that hotter years typically have more fires, right? We have the data to support these conclusions that we're making. If we think about other consequences of this warming, we're seeing a lot of ice melting. Here we have this an example from July of 2019 in Greenland, where 60% of the surface of Greenland's ice sheet experienced melting, losing more than 10 billion tons of ice in a single day, right? We're seeing melting all over the planet on both Greenland and Antarctica. We're seeing our glaciers melt. And as a consequence of all this melting, we're seeing an increase in sea level rise. Not only is sea level rising, it's rising at a faster rate than we've seen it before, and it's projected to keep rising at a faster rate. If we think about the impact of these rising sea levels on Georgia specifically, the Georgia coast has experienced over 10 inches of sea level rise since 1953, and Georgia DNR recommends that the coastal communities plan for anywhere between 4 and 6.3 feet of sea level rise by 2100. This means that we have over 178,000 people in Georgia that could be at risk from sea level rise impacts by 2100. And a lot of these people, unfortunately, are socially vulnerable populations. We have some of these examples already that we can see. We think about Tybee Island. People along the coast, particularly in Tybee Island, are really taking this climate change and sea level rise and loss of our marshes very seriously, because they're the ones that are already living with it. They're seeing greater tidal surges. They're seeing flooded roads. They're seeing really old trees being killed by saltwater intrusion. We're having this rise. We're feeling it now here in Georgia. This isn't something that's happening other places. This is happening here. If we think about coastal flooding in the Savannah area, we can look at kind of through time how much flooding would have occurred naturally, and we can compare this to the amount of flooding driven by climate-linked sea level rise. We're seeing the number of days of coastal flooding increasing, and we see that this is going to be connected, and this is connected to climate-related sea level rise. If we keep thinking about our oceans, right, while our atmosphere is getting warmer, it's not getting as warm as it could be, because our oceans are trapping this heat. It's also absorbing carbon dioxide, but it's trapping a huge amount of this excess heat. And we see evidence of this if we simply look at the temperature of our oceans over time. We're seeing that our ocean temperature set a new record in 2019, and similar to atmosphere temperatures, 2020 likely to set a new record. If we think about all the consequences of our climate change and how it's threatening our oceans, we can't just think about these increasing temperatures. We also have to think about our oceans becoming more acidic because it's absorbing lots and lots of CO2. And we're also creating environments in our oceans that contain less oxygen. So this is having an impact on our biosphere. So climate change and our oceans, we see sea level rise, we see coral bleaching, we see an increased number of toxic algae blooms, we're seeing loss of habitats, we're seeing ocean acidification, and a major disruption to our fisheries. And this is affecting the marine food web, but also local livelihood, people that depend on our marine ecosystem for their economy. Also people that eat and their food security is connected to oceans. They're having a huge impact. So lots and lots of problems connected to our oceans, all tied back to climate change. If we start thinking about other consequences, right? Lots and lots of consequences of this rising temperature. If it's warmer out, we're going to get more evaporation. More evaporation is going to lead to more precipitation. More precipitation is going to lead to more flooding, because all of this extra water has got to get back to the ocean somehow. More water in our oceans, more evaporation. So we're constantly disrupting our hydrologic cycle, and we have evidence that this disruption is taking place. If we think about this precipitation component, we're seeing global record-breaking precipitation anomalies. We're getting more and more extreme precipitation events. We're getting these rain bombs. Maybe that's something that you've heard on the local news here in Newton County and in the state of Georgia. When we think about precipitation events, it's hard not to think about hurricanes. If we go back to 2018, we can think about the devastating effects Hurricane Michael had on Georgia. For the United States, it was the third strongest storm to ever hit. But if we think specifically about Georgia, it had a huge impact on our economy. It destroyed $2.5 million worth of crops in our state. Only 15% of our cotton crop was saved and harvested before this storm hit. If we go back one more year to 2017, we can think about Hurricane Irma, right? This is a storm that remained a Category 5 for 3 straight days, and this broke a new global record since we started having satellite tracking. So our storms are lasting longer, and they're staying at a higher intensity for even longer because our oceans are so warm, and it's this warm ocean temperature that is fueling our hurricanes. If we go back and still think about Hurricane Irma and its impact on Atlanta, this was the first storm where Atlanta had its first ever tropical storm warning. Normally, we're so far inland that the storm has broken up enough and the winds have come down enough that we're not at that tropical storm stage by the time it gets to Atlanta. But these storms are stronger than ever, and we're feeling the impact of them further and further inland than we've ever seen before. If we think about 2016, we've got Hurricane Matthew, where we can see another example of how this increased precipitation and warm oceans has had an effect on the Georgia economy. And instead of affecting cotton this time, it devastated our pecan industry. Farmers lost as much as 1/3 of their pecan trees. And some of these trees were older than 100 years old. Right? We think about 2020 hurricane season. We're not done with it yet. So far, we've had 20 named storms, and on average, we only have 12. So we're seeing more storms. We think about the number of actual hurricanes relative to our average. So far, we have 7, and on average, we have 6. We've only had 1 major hurricane so far. Fingers crossed that we don't hit this forecasted number of maybe up to 6 storms. So overall, if we start thinking about worldwide extreme weather catastrophes, we're seeing an increase as we move through time. More extreme temperatures, more droughts, more fires, more floods, more mudslides, more storms, hurricanes, precipitation events, things like that. And we're seeing this impact financially as well. If we look at the number of billion-dollar disasters affecting the United States between 1980 and 2019, there is some variability up and down, but overall we have this trend where we're seeing more billion-dollar disasters in 2019 than we did in 1980. A lot of them are connected to the weather events. Severe storms and flooding have definitely increased relative to 1980. We're seeing these impacts and they're getting worse. This idea of climate change is not just about environmental issues. We can also think about other impacts it's going to have on people and human populations. And the US Department of Defense made this quote. They've said that climate change will likely lead to food and water shortages, pandemic disease, disputes over refugees and resources, and destruction by natural disasters in regions all over the globe. If we think about this impact of refugees on Atlanta, it's been projected that the Atlanta area could see up to 320,000 climate migrants by the end of the century due to sea level rise. And we also have this terrible statistic and this fact that climate change is the biggest global human health threat of the 21st century, right? This is not just about our environment being destroyed. This is about our environment being destroyed and human lives being lost. This is a human health threat. It's also an economic threat, right? We can look at all the costs associated with carbon and climate change, political instability, floods and mudslides, wildfires, droughts, storm damage, ocean acidification, infrastructure loss, climate refugees, species extinctions, melting glaciers, famine, water security issues, ecosystem loss, our way of life being disrupted, infectious diseases spreading, sea level rise, right? We can confidently make this conclusion that climate change is the #1 threat to the global economy. And it's not just the global economy, right? This, again, is not just happening elsewhere. It's happening here. And we can think about the American South and Midwest are expected to suffer the largest economic losses in the United States due to climate change. Extreme flooding, storm surges could cost us up to $60 billion a year by 2050. This is a huge economic impact that we're all going to have to bear. So, must we change? The answer is yes, absolutely yes, 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 no doubt about it, yes.
And my question would be, can we change? And the answer to that is yes. Melissa has built a great argument for why we need to change. And I would like to propose that we have a lot of these solutions already at hand, whether we're talking about how we generate our electricity or how we fuel cars and trucks and buses, how we grow our food. our buildings and how we build those. Are we going to build them according to energy efficiency plans, things like Earthcraft homes, LEED certified buildings? So we have a lot of things in place that we can use as we move forward. So we have these solutions at hand. If we look at electricity, we think about wind. US wind capacity has increased as we've looked at it over time. Globally, wind could supply worldwide electricity consumption 40 times over. That's really unbelievable when you think about it. Georgia, we don't think about ourselves as being really big in wind, but it does have the potential to generate 1.7 times its current energy consumption. So again, more than we need with wind power that would be really mostly offshore. Our topography does not allow us to have a lot of wind, certainly as much as we need, but most of that would be offshore, and we haven't really developed that yet, where more and more studies are showing that this is going to be the case. We are already benefiting, though, from the economy of, or the economics of this wind manufacturing. Right now in Georgia supporting over 700 jobs. So that's obviously a benefit to our state. If we look at another renewable energy, I always like to think about solar is never running out, and hopefully they'll never tax us on our solar energy that we use in our homes and so forth. But world solar installations right now, you can see, have just skyrocketed as well. That's been a great resource for renewable energies globally. In the US, we already have 85 gigawatts of solar energy capacity. That's enough to power over 16 million homes. So again, it's something that's going to be, we can use and use now. Georgia, we're seeing more and more solar panels going up everywhere. Georgia has the potential to generate 50 times its current electricity consumption from solar energy alone. So the Southeast is really big on solar, and that's going to be one of our biggest industries, and it's going to be one of the best ways that we have to reduce our carbon footprint. You can see this graph shows again that increase for Georgia over the years. It also illustrates that we had sort of a peak in 2015. I wouldn't say a peak, but a plateau where we sort of flattened out our curve a little bit. And that's due to the loss of a statewide energy tax credit for solar. And that's going to be something that we need to continue to work on, is policies in Georgia and with our Public Service Commission and all, how we can do that. And again, this year we get to vote on some of those members. So that will be important for us to look at where they stand on some of these issues. This is really cool. So in Social Circle, we have our own facility. It was in Walton County, and for a long time we were the largest solar farm east of the Mississippi. We have lost that because so much solar has come in, but it's really nice to know that we have a lot of solar close to home. And again, Facebook is in Walton County using some of that electric energy. So we're excited. It attracts businesses. Our potential, you can see from this solar map, it really shows you that most of our potential is Southwest Georgia. And we're going to see that a lot of our peanut farms and large farms down there are converting to solar farms. So this is a picture of a solar farm in Plains, Georgia, and it helps us to rank 9th in the US for installed solar capacity. Now, some of this is coming from electric companies like EMCs. So Snapping Shoals has, at the Pony Express, they have a great solar array there that they are using to offset some of their carbon footprint. So we're going to see some of that, but we're also going to see it by individual companies putting solar panels on their buildings, and then of course residents doing as well. An economic impact again is jobs. We're all thinking, what are these next jobs coming to? Our economy is struggling right now, but the fastest growing occupations between 2019 and 2029, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, is going to be wind as number one for a wind turbine service technician, and solar installers is number three. So these are good money-making kinds of industries that we want in our state. And again, solar is going to probably be our biggest. Solar, again, over 4,000 solar jobs now, with at over 190 companies, whether they're manufacturing, whether they're installers, solar installation, or supporting industry. It's a big impact on our economy. This is kind of interesting. I put this in because it shows a graph of the electricity related energy jobs in Georgia. And notice the bar on the right is solar. We're almost 5,000 solar jobs. And if you look at the others like coal and natural gas, we're far and above those. Nuclear, which again, we've got a new nuclear plant coming online. Plant Vogel is adding some reactors there. We're still almost double that. So solar is really big for our economy and for our reducing our carbon footprint. And a lot of that has to do with the cost. So solar electricity in Georgia in particular has declined 38% over the last 5 years. And that's allowed homeowners, businesses, but I think, I was able to capitalize on this reduction in price. I joined the Solarized Newton Morgan program that was purchasing bulk. So I got a better price on my panels. And I was able to add some panels to my roof, and I felt really good about that. Being able to kind of finally put my money where my mouth is, felt really good. And it's paying off as well. It's been an economic benefit for us. So you think about electricity, and we would like to make it from renewable sources like wind and solar. But again, the wind isn't always blowing and the sun isn't always shining. So we've got to figure out a way to store it. And this is a graph looking at battery storage capacity from 2011 projected into 2040. And you can see, again, that graph is just going up. Energy storage deployments doubled from 2017 to 2018. So you can see we've really set a record for heading in the right direction. And again, part of that is price. Those batteries have come down in price, and that's made it a lot more affordable for people to be able to use those and have more of them in circulation for people to take advantage of. So we've talked about electricity and how electricity is generated, and wind and solar are certainly some great choices, solar particularly for Georgia. But one of the things that you and I can do as homeowners and businesses can do is really some energy conservation things. So we're adding insulation to our homes. We're looking at wrapping our houses much more tightly as we're building them. If you look at the Earthcraft and LEED certification guidelines, you can get a lot of information about energy efficiency in your homes and in your businesses. But one of the biggest things that we've seen is this influx of LED lights. People have really jumped on board. I've replaced all my light bulbs in my house with LEDs lights, and they really help us reduce our carbon footprint. And you can see that by 2025, they are projected to be about 95% of the total lighting market. So really doing a good job there. And that's reduced the need for so much energy, which has really been a big help. Conservation is key. And then we think about how we move ourselves around this planet. How do we get from here to there? I always think about the little Dr. Seuss, here to there and there to here. And we want to do it in environmentally friendly ways. And electric vehicles are taking off. Georgia ranks 5th in the US for the number of electric vehicles on the road. And you can see there a statistic as of August 2019. Georgia had over 100,000 electric cars registered. So you can see Georgia is taking advantage of that. I really like, again, this because it shows the effects of policy changes. And you can see, again, around 2015, there's sort of that little plateau and the curve doesn't go up quite as rapidly after that. And again, it's because we lost a tax credit that people were getting when they purchased electric vehicles. And so again, that's just one of the things that makes a big difference. And again, vote and think about who might help us get some of those back in place. In transportation, we're seeing the beginnings of a massive shift to electric vehicles, and these companies all have electric models in production. So you can see it's all of them almost that we know about. Policy, we talked about the importance of that, and just September 2020, so just not even a whole month ago, the governor of California, Governor Newsom, signed an order banning sales of new gasoline cars by 2035. So that means they will really be pushing electric vehicles after that point. They won't get gasoline powered cars off the road, but the new ones that are being sold will be electric vehicles. So that is going to be a really important thing. You can see it's the most massive clean car policy in the United States. And we're not surprised that it's coming out of California, but we hope other states will also take advantage and kind of follow in their footsteps. I think the thing we worry about the most when we think about whether we're going to buy an electric car or not, I hope I do get to buy one in my lifetime. I'm planning my next one to be electric vehicle. I don't have one yet. But one of the things I think about is how far will those electric cars go if I want to take them on the road to visit my friends and my family. And I think about those infrastructure, those charging stations, where they're going to be located. How am I going to get my charge when I need it? Right now in Newton County, we already have several locations. So Georgia Piedmont on Alcovey Road across from the sheriff's office there has several stations there. Oxford College has several stations over in Oxford, and the city of Covington is thinking about adding one in the city. Hopefully that'll be pretty close to downtown so people can take advantage of the restaurants and nice things to eat. I charged recently with my brother-in-law who has an electric vehicle at Panola Road, and it was a huge station with tons of charging stations, and they were those super speeders. So it only took him about 45 minutes to get a full charge. It was really cool. We don't think about agriculture, but really how we grow our food makes a big impact on our carbon footprint. It's kind of hard to wrap ourselves around that because we don't see that as a relation to carbon emissions. But in 2019, the UN International Panel on Climate Change said that agricultural activities were responsible for almost a fourth of our global greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a big impact on our carbon footprint. Georgia's our number1 industry is our agribusiness. So we are a big agricultural state with over $75 billion in economic impact every year from our agribusiness. And we think about things like our peaches, our chickens, our pecans, blueberries. And we had to cross through pecans because for the second year in a row, New Mexico is the nation's top pecan, if you'd rather hear it that way, producer over us. So we've lost our #1 status for pecans. And again, it's the hurricanes that came through 2018, 2016, and also the droughts that we had last year that Melissa mentioned as well. These kinds of things hurt our agricultural business, but it's still a big economy for us. So what can we do to make our agricultural less of an impact on our carbon footprint? Regenerative agricultural practices can help us reduce our carbon footprint in a big way. The Rodale Institute says that if we convert all global croplands and pastures to regenerative agriculture, we could sequester more than 100% of our current carbon dioxide emissions. Y'all, that's unbelievable. And when you look at the list there of what regenerative agricultural practices really are, you can see it's organic farming, basically. So if we can get more and more farms, large and small, to use this type of agriculture, we'll be doing a great service to our carbon footprint. The Rodale Institute actually has the longest running side-by-side comparison of organic and conventional farming in North America. They call it their farming systems trial. And what they have found is that these organic regenerative systems use 45% less energy than conventional agricultural does, release 40% fewer carbon dioxide emissions. I hope I said 45 the first time, but anyway, but also sequestering carbon. So keeping it in the soils by doing things like not low till or no till farming. These kinds of things are going to make a difference. Project Drawdown, that Maurice is going to talk to you about in a minute, has estimated that regenerative agriculture could remove an astonishing 23.15 gigatons of carbon dioxide from our atmosphere by 2050. So we could actually suck down carbon out of our atmosphere. And that's really one of the things we think about. A lot of people say we're running out of time to really reduce our carbon footprint. But what we know is that it's all about how much carbon's in the atmosphere. And we really need to think about reducing that to, just the 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide that many of our expert scientists have been big impact. So can we change? Yes. Whether we're talking about our electricity, or whether we're talking about the way we run our home, or whether we're talking about what we're running our cars and our trucks on, our agriculture. We have the technologies at hand to make an impact now.
So if we listen to what Melissa shared earlier, it's really not a viable option not to change. So will we is really is not even an option.
Yeah.
But I think, as we just heard from what Theodosia shared, that we already are changing. So really, and it's not only good for the environment, it's actually economically advantageous. So the real question is not just will we, but will we change far enough, fast enough? And so that's what I want to spend a few minutes on. And a lot in the news, obviously, back in 2015 with the Paris Agreement, with every nation in the world signing on, and then news again in 2017 when the U.S., when President Trump announced the U.S. would back out of that agreement or would withdraw. But it's important to understand that that can't actually take place until, ironically, the day after the 2020 election. And I don't want to get off on that tangent, except to say that for the purposes of this, what we want to look at is not just that picture, but what are we doing in the U.S. specifically? And so if we look at this slide here, originally it was California, New York, and Washington as founding members of the United States Climate Alliance. But if you look at the 24 states that have signed on, that's more than half of our population in these states. And so Theodosia mentioned some of the policy changes in California, but this kind of collaboration at a national level is very important. But if we look even at our within our states and within our cities, there are, all these cities have committed to 100% renewable electricity. They'll all set various timelines for when that will take place. And if you look even further into that, there are a handful that have already met that goal. So they're generating 100% of their electricity today in these cities from renewable sources. So taking it from the state down to the cities, and in Georgia, we've got Atlanta, Athens, and Savannah who've said they will get there by 2025, and Augusta and Clarkson by 2050. So in Georgia, we saw the data that Theodosia shared, but it's very feasible, it's very economically advantageous, and cities are doing that. And in our own city of Covington, Georgia, back in April, as part of the celebration for Earth Day, which was the 50th anniversary, we worked with the mayor and council and city staff to adopt a resolution in the city that committed to making decisions that looked not just at economic considerations, but social and environmental implications, to actively look at trade-offs when those things came into conflict, and make good decisions that have long-term balance that take care of future generations, to reduce the city's carbon footprint, and to promote dialogue with experts, with citizens, with stakeholders in the community. So we were very excited about that. And at the same time, we also worked with Sustainable Newton, sponsored a project with the Sellers School of Business at Georgia Tech, their sustainable business practicum. We had a group of graduate students who worked with us late last year and the first part of this year to do a study for the city of Covington, looking at the city's fleet of vehicles and help them assess ways that they could use both the compressed natural gas facility that the city already has and electric vehicles, charging stations and electric vehicles, to reduce the city's carbon footprint or emissions from those vehicles. And the students came back with a very detailed and very actionable plan that would get 40% reduction over 2 phases. And also at the same time showed the city how much money we could save by doing that. So, and then since then, we've actually gone back and put in another proposal to the students that was accepted for their fall semester, a different group of students. And now they're working with the city on detailed strategies for implementing and promoting electric vehicle adoption in the city. So the things that Theodosia shared, the city of Covington is actually working on those, and we're getting good technical expertise through the folks at Georgia Tech. Meanwhile, in the city of Oxford, when we were doing our Solarise Newton Morgan campaign that Theodosia referenced earlier, Oxford was very supportive in eliminating a fee that was making it disadvantageous for some people to install solar. Since then, this year, the City Council established a Sustainable Oxford Committee in the City of Oxford, a group that is, regularly looking at long-term strategies for conservation, for carbon reduction, and all of that. And then the mayor and council members from Oxford participated with us in a virtual town hall that you can find on our website and our YouTube channel. That was very informative and showed a really good view of the long-term thinking we've got with the leadership there. Okay, so if we go on, so that's the public sector. But meanwhile, in the private sector, every day, if you follow the news at all, you see companies that have made commitments around sustainability, commitments around their carbon reduction. And actually, these 240 companies have all committed to, these 240 companies that we may or may not see on the screen have all committed to 100% renewable energy as well. So our local governments, our businesses, everybody embracing the idea of renewable energy. But the point of this slide and going on to the next one is that these companies are partly incented to do this because the public is demanding that they do that, and especially younger citizens. Although if you look at these pictures, I was in Walla Walla, Washington last September for when the student march was taking place there, and it was really encouraging because what was happening was all the older folks like myself were at intersections getting the younger people safely through. But I mean, this went on like this for probably 20 or 30 minutes of people marching by. So we're changing because the people who are going to inherit this world from us are saying we have to change, and I think that's what's going to drive this forward. So if we go on, this study is done every year by Yale University and the folks at George Mason University, and they do a series of questions that gauge public opinion towards climate. Everything from, do you believe it's changing? Do you believe humans are causing it? Does it worry you? Do you want to do this, and this about it? But it's a great benchmark to see how we're progressing in terms of our attitudes. And this was back in April of this year, and the left means you want to do something, the right means you're not convinced. And if you look at it, a quarter of the people in America right now are alarmed. And if they watch what Melissa took us through, they ought to be alarmed. But if you look at, just alarmed, concerned, and cautious and add up, that's 3/4 of the public saying, I'm worried. And so, I think too often, I know I do, we put an event on like this, we put a Facebook post out there, and I get negative snide comments from people, and it's real easy to get distracted by that. But the reality is 3/4 of us are ready to do something.
Yeah.
And the other quarter, the disengaged aren't a problem. They just need to be brought along. Doubtful can be persuaded, but we need to focus on the 3/4 of us that are ready to do something. So this is something we can feel really good about. If we go on, I'm fond of the saying, if those that don't say it can't be done should get out of the way of those that are doing it. And so one more, Melissa. These are all films or series of films that we featured at Sustainable Newton 2040. We had a screening and a panel discussion, Story of Plastic, where you can sign up now and view that film through us. And we're going to have a panel discussion on Thursday of this week. Kiss the Ground's a film that is out now on Netflix. It talks about all the regenerative agriculture that Theodosia mentioned, and we haven't scheduled that yet, but we're going to have a panel discussion around that as well. And then just yesterday, I had a session you can find on our website and our YouTube channel with Erica Gilsdorf, who's a filmmaker out of Duluth, Minnesota. And I met her earlier this year through the Climate Reality blog, and she's been doing a series of positive stories about people taking action, like we try to do here in our area. And actually, she's now embarking on a trip across the northern plains to the West Coast, down the coast, and then back across the country. And she's going to end up here next spring. When she and I talked, she wasn't sure if she'd do that or not. And I guess I was the crazy one that persuaded her she should do it. So, but she's going to be taking these little stories along the way of people, just ordinary people like us, the folks on the Zoom here, folks watching this on Facebook, who said, I got to do something. That's how Sustainable Newton got founded in the first place. So these are all groups. They're great stories.
Maurice.
Yeah.
I was going to mention that, we look at that and the story of plastic, we think about plastic pollution and we worry about the sea turtles with the plastic straws in their nose and the bag trees that we see in Newton County are flying as you're riding along. But, you think about the petroleum industry and how big that is in the plastic industry. And so again, thinking about moving away from some of these mining things and the offshore drilling that we're worried about for Georgia and our beaches. And so it's all related, to this bigger issue of climate change.
Yep. So, those films are not just films. They're nonprofit groups working on solving this problem from different angles. Another group that I'm very encouraged by, a movement that I like to follow, they do a lot of really good content, some of which is featured here on their YouTube channel. But World War Zero is an organization originally founded by John Kerry, former Secretary of State John Kerry, and a number of other prominent folks in the country. And actually, one of his primary partners right now is John Kasich, the former Republican governor of Ohio who ran for president in 2016. And so back to that point earlier about the Paris Accord, and somehow this sometimes becomes partisan. This is a group that's very bipartisan, nonpartisan. They do a great job of bringing in all kind of different perspectives and talk about the Green New Deal versus a market-based, different kinds of. So it's really informative, and they're really driving a lot of energy towards finding, and young people, as you can see in some of these. So I would encourage you to go and find some of their videos and watch them. Another group that is national, but there's a Georgia chapter, and that is the Citizens Climate Lobby. And again, they're focused on, Theodosia gave us a good hint there about how big a deal policy is in terms of how successful we can be with renewable energy and other technologies. So the Citizens Climate Lobby actually, takes you through the process of learning how to be a more effective advocate, a more effective lobbyist with your local officials, your state officials, your federal officials. And so it's another one that you can sign up, join. They have education you can go to, and then they have monthly sessions that are really good. So that's another important angle, also very bipartisan. And then another, Theodosia mentioned earlier the idea of drawdown. And so Project Drawdown, the book's over on my shelf. I meant to get it so I could hold it up right now, but it's the important point that to solve this problem, we can't just stop putting carbon in the atmosphere. We've got all this carbon we've already put there that's what Melissa showed us, what's happening today. That's not going to change until we draw that down. And so Project Drawdown is more the scientific side of what these other groups that I just talked about are focused on, the political and societal side, which is, hey, if we're going to do something, what gives us the most bang for our buck? And so they've looked at all these solutions, they've modeled the impact under different scenarios, and they maintain a very dynamic list of what are the top solutions to climate change. And so they'll give you some really good idea when we say things like eat less meat, or we say, you know, grow food more sustainably, or we say, you know, change to renewable energy sources. They'll show you in hard figures what that would do for our country and the world if we do that. And then at a level down from that, something very exciting that's happening this week, actually next Saturday, is the official launch of the Drawdown Georgia project. So the Georgia Climate Project is originally was a couple of the large educational institutions in Georgia, Emory and Georgia Tech. They've grown to where almost all of our higher education institutions are part of the project, and they're looking at all of the things that we can do for climate change in Georgia. And the Ray C. Anderson Foundation is the nonprofit arm of this that supports a lot of the work that we talked about that we're doing with the Georgia Tech folks that support the Georgia Climate Project. So collectively, they're bringing out Drawdown Georgia. And in these columns here, the electricity, food systems, transportation, forestry, buildings, and materials, in the coming week and the week that follows that, they're going to be laying out which of these drawdown strategies make the biggest difference here in the Southeast, here in Georgia. So it's hugely important, and it's something, if you go out there now to their website, and I'll give you a link at the end, you can sign up and, you know, go to virtual events and get more information on these things. So Drawdown Georgia is a very big deal. Today, I don't know if anybody else watched it. I spent a little time, but TED, the TED project that puts these great videos out, they've been going at it since 11 a.m. today. Today is their global launch of their year-long project focused on climate change. So a lot of cross-pollination. I saw Al Gore over there, and you know there'll be folks from that coming to Al's event here today and tomorrow. But there's a lot going on this weekend that is really focused on uniting the world to do something about this. So go check that out as well. On our website, we have links to all these things I've talked about, some I haven't talked about. So we'll keep going, and at the end, I'll tell you how you can find that. On our calendar, please stay in the loop about the things we've got going on. I mentioned the Story of Plastic film, which we're having right now. You can stream it for free virtually. The way you do that is you sign up on our website or at our Facebook page for the panel discussion this coming Thursday. And then you'll get a link in an email that lets you stream the film. I mentioned the discussion with Erica yesterday, this event. So we're always trying to keep our stuff out there, but we also post events that other organizations like Georgia Drawdown and like Climate Georgia are doing. Okay, go on. We have a very robust YouTube channel. All these events like this, if you happen to miss one or want to go back and say, wait a minute, what did she say, when they're all recorded and put on our YouTube channel, as well as our website. And so, you know, will we change? I am, we are, and we is every one of us. So, you know, it's your voice. It's your vote, which is now. And, you know, the choices that we make, the priorities that we set. So, you know, the truth is what we speak loudly enough about. So this is very much all of us in it together. But, you know, part of why we have these conversations is it depends on us. And we started Sustainable Newton 2.5 years ago because individually we just were frustrated and said, I don't know if I can change it all, but by golly, I can change something. Yeah. And so that's what we do, and that's what we're happy to have you helping us do. So I think one more. So one thing, please do, And when we're done, there should be, if you're watching on Zoom, there'll be a browser window left up that has links to all the things I just talked about, including this. If you're watching on YouTube Live, I'll post that in a little bit. But please go to the 24hoursofreality.org site. If you do that and log that you attended this presentation, they will, they've arranged through a wonderful organization called One Tree Planted, which was one of those boxes on our website I showed you. They'll plant a tree in your name somewhere in the world that badly needs it. They're doing a lot of work right now in California, which obviously is in serious need of trees with all the fires that we've suffered there. But, you know, do that, obviously vote. And, you know, however you vote, make sure that the candidates that you support know that this matters to you. And get your friends involved. You know, stay involved with the Climate Reality Project, but look for one of those other groups I talked about earlier and figure out where you fit in there and use those and use us to keep ideas coming for things you can do. So thanks so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Melissa and Theodosia. And
thank you.
We hope it's been helpful. If there are any folks that, and I haven't even looked to see how far close we are on time, but if we got a few minutes. If anybody had questions or a comment, if you want to type it in the chat, you can. Or if you want to raise your hand, I can give you the magic power to appear on the Zoom. So.
And I would like to just add that voting in person, early voting starts tomorrow or Monday, excuse me, in Newton County. So that's a great opportunity for you to think about voting. I'm going to try to vote early is what I decided rather than absentee. I felt like I'm retired, so I can go by any time to see how long the line is and see if the social distancing is going to work. The other thing I thought about for the three of us is we need to register for our One Tree Planted.
Yes.
Because we count too. Even though we're part of this presentation, we get to have a tree planted, and that's sequestering a lot of carbon dioxide, and we want to be part of that.
Yep. I got a question here from June McDowell. June asked us, keep Newton clean, support this initiative, and they do. We've met with Lori Riley. We actually were working with Lori back in April when I mentioned Earth Day. One of the things we were doing was working on putting on a program as part of the county had their Family Fun Day scheduled the same week as Earth Day. And so we were going to combine the two events and do some things for children, things for adults. And then the pandemic kind of knocked that sideways. But we rely on that program for help, you know, obviously, you know, in terms of information, in terms of getting message out, and we try to do the same for them.
And thinking about the recycling, they're so big with the recycling program in the county, and we've worked with them to try to make that clear and, you know, just encourage people to continue to recycle, even though the markets have not been what they were years ago. At least, you know, we can still make that impact.
There were one of the things we're going to do, and I can't remember the name for it now, but the name didn't make any sense until somebody explained it to me. Now I wasn't planning to talk about this, but it's a thing they do. A lot of younger people do, especially in other European countries, and that is they run and pick up trash. So it's not like a cleanup day. It's jogging and I forget what it's called.
It has a weird name.
What is it, Melissa?
Some weird name.
It was something like
in the chat. Someone she just
plogging.
Yep.
There you go. Yep.
Oh yeah, right.
June gets a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, it's a new
concept. Of course, all the young people knew exactly what they were talking about, but I was clueless. So anyway, we were going to try to do that, and of course, then you start getting into, well, what's a safe route that also has trash? But yeah, you mentioned signing up for the One Tree. I was so impressed with them last year, and it got such a positive feeling from the things that they put on their social media that I bought a lot of Christmas gifts from there. You could, you could get cards. You buy a card and a tree gets planted, or you buy. I gave people little seedlings, a Christmas tree, so I mean there are ways to support those organizations in small ways and still fulfill other needs in life. So, all right. So Nita Thompson says, thanks each of you for such valuable and enlightening information. Climate control is such an important issue that we all need to be acutely aware and take responsibility. Absolutely, Nita. And thank you for that. And thank you for being here.
Yes.
We're
in
just
spite of the fact that the Georgia game's on.
Right, I know. We're just three faces of a larger organization, and then even larger than that. But we, from the beginning of Sustainable Newton, it's always been action oriented, and it's like we really believe you can work and work and work to do some giant thing, and maybe it doesn't happen, but if you do something every day, it adds up to big things. So things like this are what make that different. So Juanita Carson asked, what is actually happening to our recycled stuff? And that's an ongoing question. I have had conversations where I was so skeptical that I've asked about specific materials. So as an example, I mean, one of the things we've had in mind to do and just haven't been able to get quite organized, and then again the pandemic makes some in-person things harder, but was to create a sort of an end-to-end project team with everybody from consumers and businesses that generate waste, preferably even manufacturers that create the waste we make, through the people who pick it up, the people who dispose of it, and the people who actually up at Pratt or wherever process it. And so, because we think it takes all those, but I was wondering about glass, because in the city of Covington, they quit taking glass. So for a while we could take it to another facility in Covington, and then they weren't doing that, but we can still take it to the county. And so I called the county solid waste manager and said, I'm just, give me some reassurance. What do y'all do with that? Do you just throw it in the landfill? Am I wasting my time? And Kevin assured me that no, he actually has a vendor that takes the glass. They sort it by color, because sometimes they need this, sometimes they don't need that. If it doesn't get taken at all, it does get ground up and used in other applications, but it doesn't just get dumped. But he said he actually is able to sell most of it, and he actually makes enough money to break even. It's not a profitable.
But it seems it's variable place to place, county to county, state to state. And this is why, we think about the 3 R's. Recycling is last. If we always forget about the reduce and the reuse. And that's such a huge component, because, we don't know what's happening to recycling. And if there's no one available to buy it, and we've had this major change in who buys our recycling as of a couple of years ago with change in policies with China, that a lot of things, if they do end up in the landfill, and there's some statistic, and I think this is globally, this is not a local thing, but like 91% of plastic doesn't end up getting recycled. It ends up in the landfill.
Right.
So
June's bringing up here, which I saw that she shared.
Yeah, that NPR article.
NPR, and I had shared one last year that was talking about how the beverage manufacturers also, but I mean, the bottom line,
reduce and reuse, we can still do those things.
And you'll hear a lot of conversation and terminology about the circular economy, and the idea that we have to be thinking about it, but you can't just deal with the end. In other words, if we don't make the end product to be reused or recycled, it won't be. So we have to actually change how we make it. Then we have to make less of it. God knows we all get enough Amazon packages that, box inside a box inside a box. So,
all the stuff. And that's where
is the first one.
Refuse.
Now we're really thinking. Right. So when you go to the grocery store, say, oh, no, thank you. I don't need that bag. And I can't tell you how many times I've got everything in my arms because I left my bags in the car. Right. I said, oh, no, I'm not supposed to be taking those. But
there was a link on one of the slides that talked about the story of stuff. Yeah. And that's a great way of, if you haven't seen that, it's a great short, there's a whole project, but there's a short video, and it talks about this, connection between consumerism and, the end product of having to deal with the waste. And we are a consumer driven society, and we don't have to have more stuff to, be happy.
Yep. And I don't want to keep us too long here, but those of you that are asking these questions, I think it's great that you are engaged on those things. We haven't figured out exactly how we organize ourselves to try and tackle this at a holistic level. But, we're going to need citizens that care. And so we'll be reaching out and trying to, I think the things we shared, the policy that they put in place in Covington and Oxford, and some of the things the county has tried to do, I think it is going to require some consistent pressure from the public, but I think we've got people that want to try to do what's right if we can just show them that we're in it with them, So, well, I want to wrap us up then, but I do want to again thank everybody for joining here and for your active, engaged participation. And we look forward to collaborating on lots of great stuff in the future. And hopefully, for starting off with such a intimidating topic of discussion, it was a happy hour. I know I'm happy. So,
Yes.
Me too.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you.